Have you ever wondered why certain things still affect you so deeply? A look, a word, a silence. And suddenly, you're no longer in control. You tell yourself to stay calm. You try to breathe through it. But something within you tightens, shifts, collapses. You smile on the outside, but inside you've already begun to spiral. And the worst part? You don't even know why. Carl Jung believed that much of our suffering doesn't come from the world itself, but from the meaning we attach to what happens. Zen teaches us that the moment we react, we've already handed over our peace. So, what if the real work isn't to change the world, but to understand why the world still has power over us? What you're about to discover might challenge everything you've been taught about strength, emotion, and healing. But if you stay with me until the end, you may begin to feel something shift, something quiet, but real. And if any part of this message already speaks to you, take a breath and hit subscribe right now. This space is for you, for the version of you that's tired of pretending, tired of overthinking, tired of being strong for everyone, while falling apart in silence. Leave a comment and tell me, what's one thing you're still carrying that's no longer yours to hold? Let's begin. Most people believe that pain comes from the outside, from what was said, from what was done, from what was never said and never done. But the truth, the harder truth, is that pain doesn't originate in the world. It begins inside of us. It begins in the gap between what happens and what we believe it means. Let's say someone ignores your message. You might feel rejected, unworthy, or invisible, but is it the act itself that hurt you, or the story your mind attached to it? Maybe it said, "You're not important. You're easy to forget. You always care more than they do." These thoughts don't come from logic. They come from the unconscious, a space within you shaped by memories, beliefs, fears, and wounds you've never fully processed. Carl Jung described the unconscious not as a dark void, but as a living realm within the psyche, a space filled with everything you've pushed aside to survive. And here's what most people miss. Until you meet those hidden parts of yourself, you will continue to mistake your reactions for your reality. That's why something small can hit you like a wave, why you crumble under criticism, why you overthink a text for hours, why the same patterns keep playing out again and again. You're not overreacting, you're reliving. Something inside you is echoing, an old fear, an old abandonment, an old shame, something you learned to suppress so well and you forgot it was even there, but it didn't forget you. It lives in the body, in the breath, in the tension behind your eyes, and every time the present mirrors the past, it wakes up. Again, Zen offers a profound mirror to this truth. It teaches that suffering is not the pain itself, but the resistance to pain, the clinging to identity, the fight to protect the ego self, the version of you that was built for safety, not for truth. This ego isn't evil, it's just outdated. It was formed when you were too young to understand what was happening. So you created patterns to stay loved, accepted, or unnoticed. You became the peacemaker, the achiever, the invisible one, the one who made everyone laugh while silently breaking. And now, even as an adult, you still operate from that outdated software, still bracing for rejection, still trying to earn worth, still afraid that if you stop performing, you'll disappear. That's why you still get hurt. Not because you're broken, but because part of you is still frozen in a story that no longer fits. Here's the turning point. You don't heal by forcing yourself to stop caring. You heal by understanding the part of you that still cares, and why. You don't free yourself by numbing emotion. You free yourself by feeling it fully, without letting it define who you are. Imagine this. You're standing in front of a mirror that only shows your reactions, and behind every reaction is a younger version of you still waiting to be seen. Zen would tell you, watch, don't become. Jung would say, make the unconscious conscious. Both lead to the same door and awareness, because when you become aware, you interrupt the pattern. You pause, you notice, you feel without collapse. And in that space, you remember who you are beneath the wound. You are not your pain, you are the one witnessing it, and that changes everything. You've heard it before. Find your center. Let go. Don't let them get to you, but how do you actually do that? How do you find peace when your mind is still screaming? How do you stay calm when everything in your chest is burning? How do you remain grounded when the people around you are pulling you back into the storm? The answer isn't found in force, it's found in presence. But let's be clear, presence isn't just about mindfulness apps or breathing techniques. Presence is a deeper shift, from identification to observation. Most of us live our lives as if we are our thoughts, as if we are our feelings. If anger arises, we become angry. If fear appears, we are afraid. If sadness knocks, we are broken. But presence introduces a sacred pause, a moment where you no longer react and but observe. You begin to see, there is fear here, but I am not fear. There is pain here, but I am not broken. There is judgment, but I don't have to accept its voice as truth. This shift is everything, because in that pause, you stop feeding the old story. You stop spiraling into the belief that you need to defend yourself. You stop chasing validation. You stop reacting to ghosts from your past as if they still hold power over you. Carl Jung believed that awareness was the first step toward individuation, the process of becoming whole. But here's the paradox. To become whole, you must first be willing to see what you've hidden. That means meeting the parts of you you've spent your life avoiding. The rage, the jealousy, the shame, the desperate need to be liked, the fear of being abandoned. Zen calls this witnessing without attachment. Jung called it integrating the shadow. Whatever name you give it, the process is the same. You begin to sit with what's inside, not to fix it, not to analyze it to death, but simply to know it. Because what you know, you can understand. What you understand, you can accept. And what you accept loses its power to control you. Imagine your emotions as visitors. Some arrive loud, others come quietly. Some stay too long. But none of them are you. You are the host, the one who welcomes, watches, and releases. This is where real freedom begins, not in silencing the inner noise, but in no longer believing every sound is worth your reaction. You may be wondering, but how do I detach without becoming numb? The answer is compassion, not the kind you give others, but the kind you finally offer yourself. You begin to see that your patterns had a reason, your fears had a history. Even your worst habits were born from a desire to protect yourself. And once you truly get that, once you stop judging the younger version of yourself who had to survive, you begin to create space. Space to choose differently, to breathe before you speak, to feel without collapsing, to witness discomfort and still remain rooted. Zen teaches, when the mind is still, the whole universe surrenders. But stillness is not something you find outside. It's something you uncover within. It begins when you stop trying to outrun the moment you're in. When you stop blaming the trigger and start understanding the wound. When you stop fighting your emotions and start letting them pass through. Carl Jung said, we cannot change anything until we accept it. So ask yourself, what have I been resisting? What part of me am I still afraid to meet? What emotion do I still label as wrong or weak? Because that's the part still calling for your attention. Not to punish you, but to liberate you. Let's be honest, this work isn't glamorous, it's not loud, it doesn't get applause. It happens in quiet moments, in the space between one breath and the next. It's in the decision to pause instead of snap, to feel instead of numb, to stay instead of run. And the more you do this, the more you choose awareness over reaction, the more your inner world begins to stabilize. You'll notice it when someone tries to provoke you, and you don't. Take the bait. When the message is left unread and you no longer spiral. When the disappointment comes, and you breathe through it instead of breaking under it. This is what it means to be free. Not untouchable, not emotionless, but deeply aware, and no longer hijacked by every emotional wave. And you don't get there by force. You get there by choosing again and again to come back to yourself, to the breath, to the body, to the quiet, steady place within you that doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. That place is always there. It's never been lost. You've just been too busy surviving to hear it speak. But it's waiting, not to make you perfect, but to make you whole. Peace. It sounds like a beautiful word, but for many it feels like a distant dream, something reserved for monks, sages, or those lucky enough to be untouched by trauma. But here's the truth. Peace isn't something you find. It's something you build. And more than that, it's something you protect. Carl Jung believed that true freedom, the kind that isn't stolen by people's opinions or threatened by rejection, comes from individuation. That's the process of becoming whole. Not perfect, not flawless, but whole. And to be whole, you must stop living for everyone else's expectations. You have to leave behind the version of you that was designed to be liked and start listening to the version of you that wants to be free. Zen would say, let go of what you think you should be and just be. But just being sounds terrifying when you've spent your life adapting, pleasing, performing. So how do you begin? You begin by redefining what strength means, not as the ability to endure more pain, not as staying silent through chaos, not as smiling through your own exhaustion. Real strength is this, to stay rooted in your truth, even when the world wants you to bend, to feel the discomfort and not abandon yourself, to say, I'm not okay, and not feel ashamed. This kind of strength doesn't shout, it doesn't perform. It simply is. That's what makes it unshakable. But here's the thing, no one tells you, to live in peace, you have to risk losing people, because peace doesn't always look like harmony. Sometimes it looks like silence after you set a boundary. Sometimes it feels like loneliness after walking away from chaos. Sometimes it means disappointing others in order to stay aligned with yourself. That's the price of truth. And the gift is liberation. Carl Jung knew that individuation required the courage to stand alone, not in isolation, but in self-respect. To stop looking outward for validation and begin finding it in your own reflection. He wrote, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." So if you want peace that no one can take from you, you have to stop outsourcing your sense of self. It's not found in applause, not in approval, not in being chosen. It's found in the quiet decision to choose yourself every single day. You choose your peace over their opinion, your truth over their comfort, your soul over their projections. And that's where something magical happens. You stop being reactive because you no longer feel responsible for how others feel about you. You stop carrying guilt because you realize that honoring your needs is not selfish, it's sacred. You stop betraying yourself just to maintain temporary connections. Zen calls this non-attachment, not detachment from life, but from illusion. From the belief that your worth is negotiable, that your peace is fragile, that love means sacrifice. True non-attachment isn't cold, it's clear. It allows you to love deeply without clinging, to give without losing, to feel without drowning. And when you reach this place, you begin to notice something subtle but powerful. The things that used to shake you no longer do. The people who once triggered you start to fade into the background. The thoughts that once owned you pass like clouds without thunder. That's the beginning of emotional sovereignty. You stop asking, why don't they understand me? And start asking, why do I need to be understood? By them, you stop trying to control outcomes and start creating internal space to handle whatever arises. Because when your peace depends on others, it's always at risk. But when your peace comes from within, from your own self-acceptance, self-awareness, and deep-rootedness in your truth, it becomes untouchable. It's not about being invincible. It's about no longer living at the mercy of everything outside you. That's the ultimate shift. From reactive identity to stable presence. Carl Jung knew that this kind of transformation requires not just insight, but integration. It's not enough to know your patterns. You must live beyond them. It means choosing presence over performance, stillness over urgency, wholeness over perfection. And it won't always be easy. You will be misunderstood. You will have moments of doubt. You will fall back into old ways sometimes, but each time you come back onto breath, to awareness, to yourself, you strengthen your foundation. And eventually, You stop fearing life's noise because you found something quieter within, a place no one can touch, no disappointment can shake, no rejection can define. That place is yours, and it was never lost, only forgotten. Now, it's time to return. There comes a moment, quiet, almost imperceptible, when something inside you begins to shift. Not because life suddenly became easier, not because others finally treated you differently, but because you finally stopped abandoning yourself. You stopped chasing approval in rooms that silenced you. You stopped waiting for the world to give you permission to rest, to speak, to feel. You stopped asking, what do they want from me? And started asking, what do I need to be fully myself? That is the beginning of peace. Not the kind of peace that comes and goes with circumstances, but the kind that lives deep inside your bones, the kind that whispers, even if they don't understand me, I will not abandon myself. Even if this hurts, I will not close my heart. Carl Jung taught us that healing isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming who you always were, before the world told you to be quiet, small, or perfect. And Zen reminds us that truth doesn't shout. It simply is. You don't have to force it. You just have to remember it. So if you're still here, if something in your soul stayed with this message to the very end, then this space was made for you, for the empath who feels too deeply, for the overthinker who wants peace but doesn't know how to get there, for the strong one who holds it all together but cries behind closed doors. You are not alone anymore. There is a community forming here, not just around ideas, but around healing. A place where masks can fall, where emotions are not judged, but honored, where we don't rush to fix but choose to feel together. Because true healing doesn't happen in isolation, it happens in presence, in shared truth, in the sacred act of being seen without performance. If this video resonated with you, if it stirred something buried or gave language to something you've always felt but never knew how to say, I want to personally invite you to be part of this space. Click subscribe now. Not just to follow, but to walk with us, because every video here is created for hearts like yours, wounded, wise, ready. Leave a comment below. Tell me, what did this video awaken in you? What belief are you ready to release? What truth are you finally ready to stand in? When you write, you're not just speaking to me, you're speaking to someone else who's scrolling in silence, still afraid, still unsure, still searching. Your words might be exactly what they needed to hear today, and if you're willing to keep going, if you're willing to keep turning inward, keep healing, keep becoming more of who you were always meant to be, then you're not just a viewer here, you're part of something, a movement, a remembrance, a quiet revolution of wholeness. So take a deep breath, let go of what no longer belongs to you, and step forward, not perfectly but fully, because your peace is sacred, your presence is powerful, and the world doesn't need a more polished version of you. It needs the real you, whole, honest, awake. We'll be here, every step of the way.